Perek Sheni. Chaf Mabet. So the good news and the bad news is it's the first two sides are fairly simple and straightforward. That's the good news. The bad news is they're fairly boring. Okay. How could they be boring? It's a lot of identity of different objects. In other words, what picks up really is the bottom of Chaf Aleph Mad Aleph and Chaf Aleph Mad Bet. Is I told you where it's going to get into Hanukkah. Okay. So, but you have to put up with the first page first. And I'm sorry. You say the Mishnayot every week. So now we're going to see if you really know what you're saying. Okay. So this actually is we're starting the second parak Chaf Mad Bet. So what really makes this hard is to identify the different objects that they are. The key rule is that they're going to have a list of wicks or wicks that we can't use, and a list of oils that we can't use, of fuels, I should say, that we can't use. The reason for both is the same thing. They won't maintain the light. The wick is not going to not going to draw up the fuel evenly, so the light will flicker or possibly go out, or possibly you'll want to adjust it. And the same thing with some of the fuels. The fuels that are here are not good fuels. They don't give a clean light, a bright light, a straight light. The light tends to flicker and jump up and down. So all of these items are going to be excluded for Shabbos, and that's going to that eventually is going to lead into the discussion. What about Hanukkah? Okay. Now the difference with Hanukkah is you all should jump up and say the difference between a Shabbos candle and a Hanukkah candle is. So we can't use them. So we can't use them. And if we can't use them, so therefore, so what? So we're not going to be concerned about adjusting the wick. Okay, or adjusting the flame. So that would be one thing, but you'll see that itself is not accepted by everybody. So the Gemara is going to give a couple of possibilities.
You can adjust the flame on Hanukkah.
You can, but you're not required to.
What's the point? Because you're not going to use it, right?
Right. In other words, if it were to go out, right? So if it were to go out, we'll see the three opinions. One is Kosta Zakuk Lok. If it goes out, you have to relight the Hanukkah candles. And the second of all, can you benefit from the Hanukkah candles?
Right.
So there are variations between A and B, A and not B, B and not A, right, and so forth, versus Shabbos, which is none of those. So that's where the opening. That's why Hanukkah got placed into this parak. But to kind of get to that, I said we're going to have to go through this list of what these items are. So the Mishnah should, of course, be very easy because, as Mr. Richter pointed out, you all say this every Friday night, unless you say Kegavla Nesach Svart. B'mem Madlikin, b'moim Madlikin. Okay, so what can you light with? In other words, what this is talking first about the psilot, the wicks. With what wicks can you not light? Ein Madlikim lo b'lechesh, v'lo b'chosen. Lechesh is, they translate as cedar bast. It's underneath the cedar bark. There's some kind of woolly fibers. Okay, so you obviously can't light with bark. The Gemara is going to ask that. Chosen is some kind of flax or uncut or uncombed flax. V'lo b'chalach, and chalach is some kind of silk, but it's not a good kind of silk. V'lo b'psilas ha'idon. Psilas ha'idon. Idon is a willow tree. So once again, it's the same kind of thing. The psila means a wick that's coming from the woolly stuff that's underneath the willow tree bark. Okay, so you have to remember, every tree, the way every tree makes a living is it is able to, through hydrostatic pressure, bring the water up from the ground all the way up into each of the leaves and each.
It's all the shmanim, all the oils that are in the Mishnah.
Oh no, okay, good.
Maybe I would send them to you.
Maybe you'll send them to all of us. You send it to me and I can send it to everybody. Okay, maybe you can translate as we go through them, okay? And then it's actually too small to see at this point, but you'll see and appreciate them. So back here anyway, so I was about to say that every tree brings it up through tubuscules, right? That all go all the way up to the top.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you want to kill a tree, what you do is you pull the bark off, because underneath the bark you're going to rip out those tubuscules. So sometimes they're right in the bark, or they're right underneath the bark, right? But you break that, and you cut that, you break the hydrostatic pressure, and the water can't go up against gravity. and that part of the tree will die, or the tree will have to reroute the water around in different ways. So psila su'idan is, once again, psila is the wicks, which means the wicky stuff, or the furry stuff, the hairy stuff, underneath the willow bark. V'lo b'psilas hamidbar, psilas hamidbar is some kind of desert plant that has also same kind of woolly stuff underneath the bark. V'lo b'yiroko shopnei hamayim, yiroko is some kind of green thing. The Gemara is going to discuss whether that is actually algae, or is it like moss, right? Both of them you could consider that they may be able to become into wicks. So the Gemara is saying here you can't. Right? Algae is a little more complex to consider as a wick, right?
Yes.
Moss is more likely. But once again,
moss usually doesn't grow in water, though, exactly, or sort of.
Well, so the Gemara will say that it grows in the bottom of ships. So I don't know what the ships were. I don't know what it was, lichen, moss, but obviously something could be processed as a wick. Now you couldn't use this for Shabbos because obviously it didn't hold didn't pull up the flame from the oil. Now when we transfer into talking about the actual fuels. Zephet is tar, right. Which is going to come off of a pine tree. Shaiva is wax. Wax is going to come off of a beehive. Shemen kik is the shemen of the kik. Now, what is kik? So the Gemara is going to offer all kinds of possibilities. It's a bird called kik. We'll see what they are, but the one that's going to jump out and you'll probably remember is the kikayon in the Yonah story. Okay? That's something you'll remember in the Holy Church. Sure. So for whatever it was, this kind of plant or bird or what is processed becomes some kind of oil, and this oil itself is not a quality oil that you could use on Shabbos. V'lo b'shemoneh-esrei. Shemoneh-esrei is oil that was to be burnt. This is a completely different reason. This is you can't benefit from the oil that was, let's say, truma tmeah. You can't benefit from it, so you're supposed to burn it. So if you're burning it, you may as well use the burning it to make a Shabbos candle. The answer is it's asam hana. So that's really unrelated. V'lo ba'alya is tail fat. Tail fat on the sheep, okay? Or oxtail. Any tail is called alya. But sheep especially have a very fat tail, right? V'lo ba'alya, v'lo b'chelev. Chelev is fat in an animal. And Nacham Amad Omer madlikim b'chelev mevushal. So on the last item, which is chelev, which is fat, the animal fat, Nacham Amad says no, you can use chelev mevushal, which is boiled or processed rendered fat. The Chachamim Romim echad mevushal v'echad shein mevushal im madlikim bon. The Chachamim come along to say no, they disagree with Nachum Amadai. It looks like the Chachamim seem to say the same thing as the first opinion, right? Looks like there's two opinions. The Gemara is going to discuss that. We're not going to get to it today. That there really is a differentiation between the first opinion that says lo ba'alya v'lo b'chelev, and the Chachamim Omrim says echad mevushal v'echad shein mevushal im madlikim bo. Okay, that's a standard discussion. The Gemara to differentiate between two opinions that look to be the same. Okay, so far so good?
So far.
Any questions? Okay, sounds familiar from Friday night? There you go. Okay. Now the fun part starts about trying to understand what these things are. So what's the first thing we had was lechesh. Lechesh is the second line of the Mishnah. You can't light with lechesh, which we said was cedar bast, or this fuzzy stuff under the cedar trees, or under the cedar bark. So the Gemara says, shuka the arza. Arza is erez. Arze halavonon, that's clearly cedars, right? We know that's what it is. So shuka actually means the bark. So the Gemara says, lechesh, the word lechesh means shuka da arza. So the Gemara says, shuka da arza, eitz balmuhu. The bark of a cedar tree, that's wood. You can't use that for a wick. What are you talking about? So the Gemara says, ba'aram nisa, I don't know if I pronounced it right, ba'amra nita, the itbei. So amranita, Rashi says, is semer. It's like a cotton. Yeshbo pinkly puzzle eito, between the peel of the actual tree, the wood of the tree, the bark of the tree, and the actual wood itself. And that's going to be the same idea that's going to come up in a lot of these items on the trees. Okay, it makes sense that these would be flammable and they'd be soft and malleable and pliable.
Sure.
Correct?
Use it for kindling.
Correct. Well, the bark you would use
it for a wick.
No, we're trying to use this for a wick. The bark you would use for kindling, but the actual fibers that are underneath the bark.
They felt if you
twisted them, you can make a wick.
Right, you could.
Correct. There's no reason not to. We're used to buying candles that are already set. So the next one is, so that was about lechesh. Next one is chosen. Chosen, we said, was some kind of flax. Chosen are Amar Rav Yosef, Ne'orot shel pishtan. Ne'orot are some kind of raw fibers of pishtan, of flax. So in other words, it's in the process of becoming linen. Linen you actually could make into a wick. You make it, but this is something that's still not really fully processed. Remember how does linen made? You have a flax plant. The flax plant you put into water, it rots out. You bang out the organic parts, and you're left with these long tubercles or these long threads, which you then tie together, and they become either fibers or become wicks. Okay, so no shall pishtan. So Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says, 1 second. The ha ksiv. It says in Yeshayahu, hachosen v'neurot. It says chosen is going to become neurot. So you see that chason, not chosen, chason, whichever this means, is not the same as naorad, which are fibers, raw fibers of pishtan. So therefore, chason can't be naorad. Elam Abaye, so Abaye says, well, something a little different. Kitna dedayek v'lo nafis. Kitna is, I believe, cotton that's already been beaten, but it hasn't been combed out. So once again, it's not fully processed as the fiber itself. I think kitna is cotton. I'm not sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He says.
It says pishtan. Okay, so kitna is going to be pishtan. Kitna is going to be pishtan, right?
Nifsom, I don't know.
Nifsom means to be combed.
Right, so that's what's happening.
So it's been beaten out. So in other words, it's not even the fiber, it's been beaten, but it hasn't been combed. So it's not exactly fibers, it's not even up to the fiber stage. Okay. So once again, I told you this is fairly, I don't want to say dry, but it's black and white. It is what it is, or not. The the next item was after chosen or chason was chalach, which we said was some kind of floss. Amar Shmuel, shaltaninhu l'chol nechut yama. So Shmuel says, I went to find out what this exactly is, this chalach is. And I asked all those who go down to the yam, all the sailors. I went down to the port, the amri le, or the amri li, and they said to me, kulba. They said what this is actually kulba shmei. It's called kulba. Okay, kulba is once again some kind of I believe, what did I say, silk? Some kind of floss silk they translate it as. So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Zira Amar Gushkara. No, it's a different kind of, this is the leftovers of silk. Okay, so in other words, this is apparently the leftovers, I believe, of what happens in the cocoon when the silkworm spins the cocoon and then it comes out of the cocoon, the leftover pieces then become used for this gushkara, which is not really the best quality silk that's there. So it works, but it doesn't really work. So if you wanted to use some kind of rinky-dink candle, you could, but not for Shabbos because it won't really always be smooth. Ravin v'Abaye have a yasik hamei the Ravna Nechemya achve the Reish Galusa. So Ravin and Abaye were sitting in front of Ravna Nechemya, who was the brother of the Reish Galusa. Chazia dehavi lovish mitakso. They saw that he was wearing some kind of garment made from this kalach that we're talking about now. So Amar Ravin Abaye, Hainu kalach. This is exactly what the Mishnah has been talking about, kalach. Look, this what this guy is wearing. This is the item. Take a picture, okay? Put it up on Facebook. So this is Hainu kalach Ditznan. This is the kalach of the Mishnah. So they were able to identify actually what it is. What's interesting is it looks like from the previous discussion, this does not appear to be the best item.
Right.
It looks like it's leftovers, and here this guy was wearing a garment, so it looks like he's a member of the Reish Galusa's household, so it looks like it's good stuff.
Right.
So I'm not sure I understand. I know what is good and what isn't good. Maybe the gushkara is bad, and the kulcha is really much a better type of quality. Okay, well, it's a better quality, but it doesn't really pull up the flame. So Amalei, so Abaye said back to Rabin, Anan Shira Parnada Karinale. Oh, this is not what we call kalach. What this guy is wearing, we call Parnada Shira silk. Parnada silk, we call this. Okay, so in other words, they had a discussion what the other guy was wearing. Correct. Okay, you see that this is reality. For us, we're reading names and we're not quite sure what it is, and we say, okay, let's go on. They wanted to know what it was. They had to know what to use for wicks. So therefore, this is what it is. Meisvei. So hashirayim v'akalach v'asirikian chayavim b'tzitzis. So we're talking about different kinds of garments which were square enough or four-cornered enough to require tzitzis. So shirai was some kind of me'il. Sirukian was some kind of also a garment that was made from silk that was folded over, but also I guess was square. And then I skipped one, the kalach, right. So all of these items are chayv and tzitzis. So the Gemara, so what's the question? You see that shirayim, which clearly means silk, and sirikian, which is also means silk, and kalach is also mentioned. So kalach is got to be something else than being a silk item. So it looks like it's something completely different. So tiyufta, so Gemara says, okay, that's just a good question. Tiyufta. So you're right, it's a question. It can't be therefore parnadad shirai, because shirai is listed and kalach is listed separately. So they're different items. So one conclusion of Gemara is it's a tiyufta on the opinion of Abaye, who says it's shira parnada. Right. And the Gemara says, and it's interesting here, after tiyufta, it's usually the end of the sugya. Right. It's a dead end, like they fall off the map. Right. The Gemara says, but Ibai saying, there's another way to answer this and give you an answer. Ibai saying, shira lechud, shira parnada lechud. So there are two types of things. One is regular silk, and one is shira, and one is silk parnada silk. So you could still list shiraim, which is regular silk, and kalach, which is parnada silk, and they're different types of silk. So once again, I'm not quite sure exactly what each silk item is, but there are different qualities, and this kind of quality of kalach silk was not a quality that was going to pull up on the flame. Okay, moving along. So far so good. Once again, it's fairly blind. Nothing really I can add to this. V'lo b'psila su'idan. Psila su'idan, I told you, the willow. Gemara says, what's idan? Achvina. Right, Rashi says achvina is our rava. And once again, Rashi says there's also a semer between the klipa and the eighth. So underneath the willow, there's this type of growth that can be used for wigs. Okay, once again, Rabban and Abaye are gone on the search for identifying these items. Rabban and Abaye have a kozli bepiksa de tamru risa. They were on some valley, if I remember correctly, some valley of Tamurisa. Chazinha lahanach arbasa. They saw some. Rashi says, I'm sorry, the sources says, don't read it at arbasa with an aleph, which usually means like a boat. Read it with an ayin, arvasa, from an arava. Okay, so it's arava. So that's what it says on the Masorah Shas, which makes a lot of sense. So they saw this arava. So Amalei Ravan Lavai. So Ravan said to Abai, Hainu Idan Ditznan. This is the Idan that we learned about. So Amalei. So Abai said back to Ravan, Hahi Eitz Bialmahu. So what are you talking about? He says that's simply a tree. How are you going to use that to make a wig? So they went over to him, and this is show and tell. Kalaf. He peeled it back. The Achvele Amranusa the Bene Bene. And he was able to show him the Amranisa, we said, was the woolly stuff that was between the bark and between the actual woody part of the arab itself. So he showed him that that's what he was talking about. So at any rate, this is, once again, you can't use all of these types of wicks you cannot use for Shabbos. V'lo b'ftilas hamidbar. Ptilas hamidbar says the Gemara is shivra. Rashi says shivra, some kind of long grass that grew in the wilderness. Doesn't really identify what type of grass it actually is. Called urtaya. I'm not sure we have a better translation. V'lo b'rocha shapnei hamayim, and not the green stuff that grows on the water. So I already told you that's a machlokas, whether it's really about what I said was moss or algae, right? So ma'hi se'ilema uchmasa decharitze. So if you say uchmasa decharitze, Rashi says is makom kanus mayim gadelem kamin yirok rekes, where the water is, there's this green film that grows on top of them, which is of course green algae. So apparently you can dry this out. Now, I was reading it and I thought maybe it could also be like seaweed, like nori or something, but I don't think they had that in the days of the Talmud. So I think it really means algae. So Gemara, and you'll see from the moment that it clearly means algae. Gemara says once again, Gefruche mefarchen. Gefruche means parach, means to break apart. He says when it dries out, it breaks apart, it cracks apart. You take algae, you can't dry to make into a wick. Obviously, you can't use a wick when it's wet. It means you have to dry this out. When you dry it out, it crumbles into nothing. The Elam Ravav Papa, Uchmasad Arva. This is the Uchmasad, this green stuff, the Arva. This is Arva with an aleph. That means a boat. Remember I told you Arva that we had before. The sources says it's ayin from Arava. Arva is a boat. So this is the stuff that grows in the boat. And this is which Rashi and the others try to say. It means Gadol Yerok Rekra Saviv Shulel Mi B'chutz. It grows on the outside. You have to understand it's like some kind of mossy kind of thing that grows that you can dry and actually use. Okay, yeah, peat moss. Hosifu Alehem. Now, so the Gemara says on top of this, Hosifu Alehem Shel Tzemer v'Shel Seyar. So let's skip the word Tana. The Brisa says, Hosif Alem Shel Tzemer v'Shel Seyar, that they added two other items to the list of the Mishnah. Tzemer is wool, okay, and Seyar is hair. Doesn't mean your hair, means like goat's hair. So those two items you can't use for wicks. Once again, why not? Why can't you use them for wicks? They're obviously not going to pull up. Well, you'll see what happens in a moment. What happens to wool when wool burns? It singes. Right, it singes and just curls up. It doesn't really hold the flame. The same thing with the hair. Also doesn't really, just kind of it burns. It doesn't really hold the flame as a wick. You can't really twist it. So the Gemara says, so they added these two items in those logic. I guess the Gemara obviously wants to know. So if they added them in the Mishnah, the Brisa says you add these two. So why doesn't our Mishnah add them? So the Gemara says Tana Didan. What about our Mishnah? How come it doesn't list Semer and Seir? So the Gemara says Tana Didan. Semer machves kavitz. Semer simply just cringes up. In other words, it's what do we call it? Singes and cringes up and doesn't really hold the fire. And Seir and the goat's hair is just simply going to burn together, just gets charred. Okay, so all of this is about the wicks. Now the Gemara says we're going to fuels. V'lo bezefes.
Excuse me. It seems to me if the Mishnah is saying that you can't use these things for wicks, the implication is that it could work as a wick.
Yeah, it could work for.
So I mean, the explanation. So why are we even discussing these things which couldn't possibly function?
Well, so the answer is it doesn't function well as a wick.
It's not going to function at all. Like you take a strand of.
So you mean Semer and Seyar, or the other items? Yeah. Right, Semer and Seyar, so that's why the Mishnah doesn't list them. It says there's no sense in even putting them here.
Okay.
The other items clearly look like they work, but they don't really. Right. So if you're you're coming home on a Monday night, you want to have a little bit of light, and you don't really care about what's going to happen. It goes in, goes out. So then you use this kind of rinky-dink, poor type of wick. Shabbos, you can't.
But it's interesting. So where does they? They're all saying what you can't use. Mm-hmm. You would think maybe they would have said, especially starting by Memad Likin, but you would think there was this whole, like what did people just went to, well they could take anything that wasn't this, presumably.
Well,
there could be a lot of stuff that's no good either that isn't really, I'm just saying.
Well, they're giving you the long list of what you can't use.
Right, what I'm saying is I could go and try 100 different items that maybe theoretically would still draw. And they wouldn't know any better than these. That's what I'm saying. In other words.
So that's why there's a whole paragraph about Memad Likin. Right. The next Mishnah is about Kol Yotzim Mino Eitz Emad Likin Bo'ola Pishtan. The only thing that comes out of a tree that you could use is actually Pishtan. Right. And then there's a number of other items about Shvorer Shalbeitzel to use and so forth. Right. So you're right, but if it's not listed in the bad list, it looks like it can work.
In theory.
Right.
Not only
but you got to get to the Mishnah.
But that it's acceptable for Shabbos. That's
correct. So you have to come to that Mishnah, which will say that anything that is organic that grows on a tree, the only thing that comes out of a plant is going to be Pishtan. It's going to be there for linen. Now there may be other items that apparently do not come off a plant. I'm not sure what. That can function as a wick. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what fabrics otherwise they would use.
So why did we list before some parts of a tree which are not to be used for
Shabbos?
On Shabbos.
Right.
And if later on we say anything that comes from a tree except Pishtan can't be used.
I don't know. It's a very good question. There may be different Mishnayos. Okay. Maybe different authors of different Mishnayos.
Didn't want to get rid of the particular Mishnah.
Right. What's another example? So just pointing out, an item that can be used for a wick that's not from a tree is canvas, and even pishtan itself is not really a tree.
No.
Right.
No, pishtan is not a tree, for sure not.
Right, and the only reason, so the Gemara is actually going to talk about the fact that if you say the only tree you can use is pishtan is not a tree. So the Gemara says that in the story with Yoshua, the story with the two men who are hid by Rachav, it says in Yoshua Perek Beit, "Vatit b'neim b'pishtei ha'etz." She hid them on the eitzim of pishtan that were drying on the roof.
Right.
So because the biblical term uses pishtan as an eitz, so therefore it calls it an eitz. But the pishtan were actually fairly tall; they were allowed to grow tall, so it looked like a tree. So a tree may not necessarily be what we etymologically call tree, right? We know. Is a banana tree or not a tree? So it may not be a tree. The botanist will call it a tree. It may be simply a large type of item.
So when there's something like jute, whether it's jute, like that's from.
So canvas. I don't know what canvas comes from. Where does canvas come from? I don't know. But it doesn't say that you can't have plant items. It says you can't have tree items. Okay. But you're right. It could have begun with that and eliminated all these others. So I'd say there are two authors of two Mishnayos, and they're simply just crafted together in this parak. All right. Yes, or sometimes it's lo zu asu. You give a list, and then you have a concluding list, concluding number. It's an excellent question. So at any rate, we're now in this transitioning between the listing of the wicks into the listing of the fuels. So we're 4 lines from the bottom. V'lo b'zefet. So zefet, the Gemara says, zefet is zifta. Zefet was zefes. Okay, zefes is the tar that comes off the pine tree. Shaiva is kiruta. Kiruta is the wax that comes off of the honeycomb. Tana. Now we have a rice that says, ad kan psul psilot, mikan ve'elak psul shmonim. So now the brisa, we don't have the full brisa, but apparently there was a brisa that was more expansive that included semer. You can't use semer, you can't use seir, goat's hair. So this brisa had at this point, at this juncture, the words ad kan psul psilot, mikan ve'elak psul shmonim. So what I just said, the Gemara said the brisa had a beferish. The Gemara says obviously pshita. Well, obviously once I transition into fuels, I understand I'm no longer talking about wicks. So look at the Gemara's answer. It's a very interesting answer. The Gemara says, shemoneh-esrei. You're dealing with wax. So wax was used in 2 different ways. And you can appreciate this perhaps today when you have floating wicks, or the wicks that we use in some of the candles themselves. Now, in other words, you can't use the shaiva, this beeswax, to use for a fuel. But what if you use the beeswax in order to give strength to the wick itself?
Yeah.
That's not the fuel. The fuel is something else. Let's say the fuel is going to be I don't know, olive oil, pure olive oil. But instead of putting a loose floppy wick, you kind of take the wick and dip it into beeswax, and now it's stiff, right? So that's okay. That is considered using shaiva as a psila, and not as a fuel.
I got you.
Okay, so that's the chiddush. In other words, when it says ad kan psilos, mikan ve'elak psul shmonim, and then it means at that point the shaiva is really being puzzled as a shemen, but you can still use it as a wig.
Right. I would assume, that beeswax for Abdallah is fine though, right?
Yeah. Yes. Right? Yeah. Yes.
Glad to hear.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, because it's fine for anything. It's fine for anything except for a Shabbos candle.
The end of Shabbos, right? I'm saying, right? So.
Right. Once again, we have to remember that the Shabbos candles that existed here were used not only ceremoniously, also were used for light. Right. We learned in the first parak. But Shalom Bayis learned the first parak you can't read by the Or Haner. Right. Who the story was? Rabbi Yossi, who almost tilted the candle, or did tilt the candle. Says when the Beis Hamikdash is built, I'm going to bring a fat carbon to make up for what I did or I didn't do it. Okay. So this is reality. So if we have fires or wicks that are going to be flickering and not holding the flame, you will come to adjust it. It's just human nature. So therefore you need something that pulls an even a good flame, a constant flame, and a bright flame. And it's not a smoky flame either. So you can use it. All right, so the Gemara. So let's come back to the Shaiva. So Shaiva is the same with nami lo chazi. I could think that I can't use it as well for a wig, right? In other words, I can't use it as an accessory to hold the wig straight. Kamash malon, no, that I can't use it for a wig. Okay. Amar Ravi Bar Amin, Itrisa Psulta Dezifta. I'm sorry, Itrina. Let's see, what's Itrina? Itron, do we have Itron in this list here? Or it's later in the parak?
It says Itron now.
Yeah, Itron is the leftover from the Zephes, and Shaiva is Psulta de Dufsha. And Shaiva that we're talking about here is the Psolas from Devash. So, and this is unrelated to what we're doing. It just mentioned we're talking about Shaiva. So Gemara says, Lamai nafkamina, who cares? So Gemara says, Lameka chamemkar. It's just really in terms of what the merchandising is. If you say you're buying dufsha, this is what you're referring to, the remainders of what happens from the dvash. Okay?
That's true. People bought honey
in the comb. Correct.
So they said, right. You're eating the honey, but all was left over.
Right. So every once in a while, the Gemara will give these types of things. It doesn't really give us an application here for Shabbos. It's giving you more of an application for something about Messiah or something in the marketplace. Okay. Kol Tan Rabbanan. This comes maybe to your Havdalah candle, or almost Havdalah candle. Tan Rabbanan. It's the first line of Chaf Alf Ben Aleph. Kol Eilu Shalmu Ein Madlikim Behem B'Shabbos Aval Osin Mehen Medura Bein L'Schamim Kenegda Bein L'Shtamesh La'ora. You can make a medura is a torch, right? We use the term today as a bonfire. Right, but it also means like a large torch, a torch with many, many wicks together that you would use either whether to create heat or to use for light, like you see in the old medieval movies where these big torches in the hallways. Bein agabe karka, bein agabe kira, whether it's on the floor, whether it's on a stove, and the Mesorah Shas says it might be more menorah, might be better here for kira. Okay, but you probably can think about how to squiggle around some of the letters and make kira into menorah. It's probably not that hard. Okay, I'm not sure. Kaf, Reish, Nun, Chaf. Okay, Hey works for both of them. Okay, so Vav becomes Yud. So kira makes menorah makes a lot more sense than kira because you wouldn't want to be putting a torch on top of your oven. That makes very little sense. You'd probably be exploding the oven. The only prohibition was to make a wick for the ner, for Shabbos ner, for itself. Okay, Rashi used the term for the ner for, I'm not sure what it means, croisel. Is that a French term, Jonathan? What does croisel mean?
A chandelier.
There you go. What do you say? A chandelier? A candelier. Candle? Okay, candelabra. Thank you. So ner means actually the candles itself for Shabbos candles, single candles. Okay, now we come to the famous shemen kick. V'lo b'shemen kicks, and you can't use the shemen kick. What is the kick? My shemen kick. What is shemen kick? So,
mythological bird.
Well, we don't know. It's interesting. A lot of the other items that they knew, and here once again they had to do research, and they did the research. Amar Shmuel, shall tinhu l'chol nechudayama. Once again, I asked all the sailors who were going out to sea or coming in from sea. Amrulin, they told me, what is kick? Ofechad yesh bekarcha yam. There's this bird over the ocean, over the islands of the ocean. The kick shmo, it's called a kick. So I guess if you got this bird, then you took the fat of the bird and you boiled it out or made it into oil, and that's what it was. It was a fatty bird, like a fat goose.
Really a fatty bird, yeah.
Okay, so that's what shemen kick. So you can't use that at any rate. Okay, Rav Yitzchak Breid and Rav Yehuda Amar Mishka de Ka'aza. What's Mishka de Ka'aza? They made this from Semer Geffen. Semer Geffen is cotton. So they would make this, and Rashi says Shekorim cotton. They would make this cottonseed oil. This is what shemen kick is. Rabbi Shlokish Amar Kikayon de Yona. No, it's from the Kikayon of Yona, which
only says a gourd.
Which is a gourd. What is a gourd, right? So
it's some sort of
it's a plant, a Racinius plant.
Racinius communis says.
It's called a Racinius plant. Right.
It's a vegetable that grows in a basket very hard out the shell.
Right.
You use in Africa as containers.
What's it called in Africa?
In Africa, it's a gourd.
A gourd. Well, we have gourds all over. We got different gourds here.
He said they're different ones.
Right.
He said, "Hu tzemach Bal surot shonot. So there's all different kinds
Right.
of these.
So this apparently was a well-known plant. For us, we get to this in the end of Sefer Yonah, of course, Mincha and Yom Kippur, you're kind of counting the minutes and hours to get to Neila and Shema Yisrael, and what is this Kikayon, and you just keep going through it. And Yonah doesn't seem to appreciate it, right?
No.
He said, because the Kikayon is there, and obviously Kikayon gives a lot of shade. The first of all, you see it's a quick-growing plant. Second of all, you see it gives a lot of shade. Third of all, you see how fickle it is. It dries up. So, but apparently this was a plant that was known, if this is the kikayon. What is not known is what the kik was.
Right.
The kikayon, there was no doubt about this. So kikayon diona, and Amar Rabba Bar Achana, L'didi Chazili kikayon diona. I saw this. So if anyone asks you in Yom Kippur, what is the kikayon story of Yonah, you'll now know. Vitsulisa dami. And it's called, or it's, let's see, what does it mean? It is some kind of tree.
Racunus plant.
Racunus or racinus plant or something, right? Racunus?
Large palmite leaves.
Right.
Very thick oil. Castor oil.
Makes castor oil. Okay, so there we go.
Healing oil.
There's some, because he says, Rav Steinsaltz says, Mizareh HaKikayon, so from the little seeds of it,
Yeah.
Nefikim Shemen.
Right.
And it's called Shemen Kik.
Yeah, well, he's kind of putting that back into the Gemara.
Back into this thing. Well, he's
Right.
talking about this plant, the Racinus communis.
Good, there you go.
He's saying.
So
the Mashesh, the fruat. So I guess they use it more for some kind of medicine or something.
So it looks, in other words, whatever this. So maybe they didn't know exactly what it was, but apparently they felt this was a plant that they could identify as the kikayon of Yonah, and this plant was for you dami. It's like a big tree, some kind of tree that's not a fruit tree. Umidapashki rabbi, and it grows on swamps. So I don't know, it means the only reason it requires a lot of water. Rashi says bitzei mayim hu gadol. It grows on swampy land. V'alpum chanusa madlin yaseh. And the storekeepers hang it on the front of their doors, the front of their stores. Remember, the stores were on the side of Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
You go to Israel and go to the Cardo or any of the Roman cities, right? So they had the stores. So they would want to attract people. It's like today, they had awnings. In the old days, they used to have awnings. They'd roll out. Correct? We don't do that. We have malls now. Okay, so they would put these big things out there that people would come in for shade, and of course they look for the wares. So Midlan Yossi, they would hang out. Mafritzdui avde mishcha. And from the Garinim, Mafrodutui, I didn't pronounce that correctly, but that means the Garinim, they would make shemen, ubi anfuche, and in the leaves, this means these big, fluffy type of fan leaves, naichen kol briche de marava, all the sick people of the West are able to relax underneath it. That's an expression that comes up in a couple places, kol briche de marava. All the sick people of the West, means Eretz Yisrael, used to, which if you, as I said, if those of us who go to Israel in the summer know what it actually can be in the heat, you want to get out of the heat, especially if you feel poorly. You really don't want to be anymore in the sun itself. So all the sick people who are looking for some respite will kind of gather under these big leaves. Okay. So at any rate, this is what the Shemen Kik is. So that really, I think exhausts the actual list itself of what they are. And now the Gemara comes along, Rabbah comes along, says, Amar Rabbah, Psilot she'amru chachamim ein madlikim b'hem b'Shabbos. These wicks that the chachamim say you can light, mipnei she'or mesachsechet b'hem, because the light, or the light dances around, jumps around on them. No, it doesn't keep a straight flame, it doesn't pull it up evenly. So the light will go big and small, big, and will flicker up and down. We use the term flickering, what it really means is like jumping. And that's about the psilot. Shmanim shamu chachamim medlikim b'hem ibnei she'enim shachim achar psila, and the oils that the chachamim say that you cannot light with because they are not pulled up after the psila. Okay, so this is really the summary of all the items that are listed. Okay. Right, so there's a Tosfos just points out, a little Tosfos Yishanim, that says if you only had one light in the house, he suggests, it's an interesting opinion, he says maybe if you only had one light, one candle in the house with this kind of wick, you could use it. Because one light you'd remember that you can't adjust it. Not really sure why, but it's a short. Shamati Shem Mahariyesh V'zal, the second Tosfos on Chafaf Manav, Sheshama B'im Yesh Rak Nerachad Kasher B'bayit Aydei Zeh Yizkar V'lo Yat Eshar Neirot Sheva Cheder. Maybe it means only one light, one candle of this kind of candle. If you had all the other candles were okay, and one candle with this jumpy kind of wick itself. I'm not sure. And then Rav Shimon Mikuti says anything that you could use without a nair, then you can use this kind of jumpy kind of wick. So if you didn't need a light,
altogether,
like for example outside, that would be considered okay because you're really going to wander around the dark anyway. And the example he gives is to take out wine from the wine cellar where you probably were used to wandering around the darkness. Okay. Let's move on. So at any rate, this is the list that goes through one after the other, and now the Gemara is going to have some reflections upon some of the items, about all the items together. So Abai had a question from Rabbi. We saw a lot of Abai until now. Shmonim shamru chachamim emadlikim b'Shabbos. All the oils that you can't use on Shabbos. Why can't you? What's the reason you said you can't use these oils on Shabbos?
They don't draw up.
They don't draw up nicely through the wick. So what would happen? This is a good question. This is a good Talmudic question. Ma'u sheyitin latochon shemoneh-esrei v'yadlik. What about if you had all this cruddy oil, but you put in some good oil? So you know that some good oil is going to pull up through the wick. So do we say, this is a scientific question, but it's really a halachic question, do you say that the good oil which is pulling up through the wick will pull up the cruddy oil, and therefore it's okay? Or do we say, no, I can't use it because of the cruddy oil?
Right.
Okay, that's the question. Now, it's hard to really understand the question from a reality.
The majority?
It says even if it's a minority. It seems to be right. It says even if kol shemen kol shehu. In other words, I have a jug here of this bad oil that doesn't pull it up through, and I take a couple of half a cup and pour it in here, and now I want to mix it together. I want to use this. So do we assume that this mixture will have enough viscosity or enough ability to kind of overcome together and pull up through the wick? Because the truth is, it looks like once it pulls up through the wick, it's going to light. The problem is it gets stuck coming up through the wick. This is going to clear the way. Okay? So do we say this is true? So the question is, the Gemara assumes, he seems to assume that it will work, but what's the concern? It's a gzeira that if we allow you to use a little bit of this mixture of good oil and bad oil, maybe next time you use just bad oil. That's the way the Gemara phrases it. Okay? So who asked the question? Abai answered Rabbah. So Amalei ain't. So Rabbah gives a very short answer. Amalei ain't madlikin. Says why you can't? Ain't madlikin with this. So Gemara says my timer. So Abai said to him, why not? I thought it was a good idea. So what's the answer? You can't light because you can't light. Boom.
I said so.
Right. Basically, so in other words, what the Rishonim explain this to mean? Rashi says because it's the gzeira stands, and even though the gzeira may not be applicable here, you kind of still say you can't use it as well. Okay, so you can't use it because you have the gzeira. You can't use this kind of oil. Okay.
So do you have to your candle, your Shabbos candles have to have a wick?
Yes.
So in someone's in hospital and they use those electric candles.
So there is a wick. So the answer is when we can't use a real candle, when we can't use a real candle or oil like in a hospital, actually they have from Bikur Cholim, right? And here's what they're battery powered. They purposely use battery powered candles. First of all, they're throwaways. They must be cheap to get from some third world country, but it also means that the fuel is in the battery. So notice, as opposed to sticking a candle, which the old candles, remember, they used to have them put them into the plug, right? So that's really constantly feeding electricity off the alternating current. So this is actually it's a better comparison to a candle because the fuel itself may not be oil. The fuel itself is the electrolytes. The electrodes that are traveling around from the plus to the minus, or the minus to the plus. Please help me out, engineers, okay? Right? So that is the fuel, and making the current. And actually, in the light itself, or in the bulb, and it's not important whether it's a 1.5 volt bulb, or whether it's a 120 volt bulb, you have a filament, and the filament is burning. The difference is because the filament is put in a nitrogen atmosphere, it's not going to burn out. it's going to burn for hundreds of hours. But it's the same thing. Eventually the filament will burn. So that's about as close as you can get to it. Correct? So that clearly, I mean, I would say that most, if not all, poskim today say that you cannot light because there's a concern. It could be a hospital, it could be a hotel for the same reason. That can work. Okay, and if you can't get batteries, you can get plug it in the wall. Same thing.
Do the best you can.
Right.
But what's the? I know I shouldn't be asked this. It's stupid. I should know the answer. Where did they get the idea of lighting Shabbos candles altogether?
From where? In the Torah?
Yeah, altogether, yeah.
Morning Shabbos. You can't have morning Shabbos without having light. Okay, I don't know that the mitzvah itself is to enjoy Shabbos, Morning Shabbos.
Okay.
So therefore, in fact, if you're sitting in complete darkness, you cannot eat your Shabbos Suda.
No, I'm agreeing. So it's from that general concept of
of celebrating Shabbos. I know it's when we say the mitzvah is lahadlik ner shel Shabbos. Correct.
I know, but
that's what mitzvah is. It's a rabbinic mitzvah.
Right.
Okay. In terms of Hanukkah candles. In terms of Hanukkah candles, it's a little more complex. Whether you can use these kinds of menorah or candles for Hanukkah candles, because we're trying to mimic the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, right? So I have seen that there is one opinion. I don't remember who it is. Maybe it was which talks about using a battery-powered candle as well would work in a real pinch, but most poskim will say that you can. For Havdalah, right? Once again, what they will say is you have to be able to see the flame. Because you say Borei Morei Ho'esh. So a frosted bulb would be more problematic than a bulb that's clear. Today, by the way, it's becoming more and more difficult to find real bulbs. Right? Yes. Fluorescents are not the same. LEDs surely are not the same. So we're living in a world that creates additional challenges every moment. Okay, but that's why they have that for the hospitals. Definitely halachically, definitely permissible. Okay. Where are we up to? So Madlikin. So Madlikin. Why? Luish Madlikin. Esvei. Karach davar shemadlikin bo al gabe davar shemadlikin bo. So until now we talked about shemen, bad shemen mixing with a little good shemen. What about now the psila? Right, again, this is the Gemara's halachic mind trying to come up with scenarios. What if I have a good wick, but I wrap the good wick around the bad wick, around the bad wick material? Is that going to really impact upon it? So read again. Karach davar shemadlikin bo al gabe davar shemadlikin bo. So the Brisa says emadlikin bo. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer shel beis abba he'korchim psila al gabe egos umadlikin. Okay. So now, why is this a question? Because this is mixing good and bad. So I think they're trying to make a comparison now about mixing good and bad together with wicks. If you can't mix good and bad for oils, why could you mix good and bad for wicks? So as Rav Shimon Gamliel said in his father's house, the house of the Nasi, they did it. So the Gemara said, let me read again. Esvei. I'm going back again. I'm going back to the beginning of the line with the stars. Karach davar shemadlikin bo, gabe davar shemadlikin bo, emadlikin bo. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer shel beis abba hayakorchim psila al gabe egos. They would take a wick and they would wrap it around a nut umadlikin. So that's a wick. That's a good wick around a nut that apparently, what was it there for? Well, what do you think it was there for?
Hold the wick, maybe. Right,
so the Gemara now thinks that the egos was there as inflammatory material as well. The Gemara's conclusion is going to be it wasn't really inflammatory material. What was the egos there for? For stability.
Yeah.
Right, but at this point the Gemara is thinking that it's really you're mixing a good wick with a bad wick.
Why then it goes a bad wick? In theory.
Why is it a bad wick? Try it at home and let us know if it works.
I'm not saying it'll work, but I'm saying they didn't list it as one of the bad ones, so...
Yeah, I don't know. Try it. I don't know.
I'm not saying it would work. I never thought it did. That's why I said...
Well, we already know the mission that comes up later. It says anything that comes off an ace is bad, and we know the walnuts come off a walnut tree. Right. There you go. Touche. Okay, now... Okay. So with the Gemara says, Katani Mihas Madlikin. So you see that the house of Rav Shimon Gamliel, they did light it. So you see mixing good with bad makes it good. So the Gemara responds and says, wait. Amalei Adamusav Leimid Rav Shimon Gamliel. Don't ask the question from Shimon Gamliel who said his father's house they did it. Sayinhu Midatana Kama. Bring it from the other opinion, which says you can't do it, because we just quoted this brisa that says if you mixed in two things together, you can't light. Then Rav Shimon Gamliel says his father's house they did. So okay, so Rav Shimon Gamliel's father's house they did, but everybody else says they didn't.
Right.
So what are you trying to ask the questions? The Gemara says halakha ma'aseh Rav. No, if you bring a ma'aseh from Rav Shimon Gamliel's household, the house of the Nasi, that trumps. No matter how, whatever Piskei Halacha kind of rules you have, the Nasi is the leader. What he does goes. It has validity, and you have a name associated with it. Whereas a Tanakama, whether is it a Rabbanan or not, it still is an anonymous person. So Gemara says Mikomakom Kasha. So Gemara says My Lav Lahadlik. It must be that is not they took the psila together with the walnut, the nut, to light them together to make this double wick, good wick and bad wick. So Gemara says Lo Lahakvos. They didn't do it. Lahakvos is to not to light it, but to support it. Lahakvos is really to give it solidity. So the Gemara says, "Ita ilahakvos my time in a Tanakama." So the Gemara says, if you can just using the nut to give it support, so why does the Tanakama say it's wrong? So the Gemara says, you're right, it's not the Tanakama. You have to read this brisa as what we call a kashrut-kosher. You've seen kashrut-kosher is a way to say that you got to read part into the Mishnah, brisa, that's not really there. There's a line that's the kilo missing. And he twisted around like this. It's not uncommon. Okay, so my time in Tanakama, Kula Rav Shimon Gamliel he v'chasur something's missing. V'achi kitani. Karach dava shemadlikim bo gabi dava shemadlikim bo ein madlikim bo. If you lit something which you can't light together with something which you can light. Something you can't light together with something you can't light it. That's about lighting it. Aval lahakbos mutar. But for support, it's permissible. How do you know this? Okay.
Right. Beautiful.
Okay. And then Gemara says Eini. So Eini, what's the Eini question going on? How do you know? So how do you know therefore that you can't? You really mean to say you can't mix things together? Mixing good and mixing bad is going to be bad.
Right.
So Gemara says, Ini, is this really true? We have one more question Gemara asks. So Gemara says, V'amarav Bruna Amarav, Chalav Mehuta. I'm sorry, Chalev Mehuta. Chalev, which is liquefied fat. I don't know how to better call it.
Yeah, that's a
liquefied fat.
Yeah.
And Kirvei Dogim. Kirvei Dogim is not to be confused with the brine. Kirvei Dogim is the innards of the fish that have become completely messed up and mushed together. So this I don't know what to tell you what it is. To me it sounds like the most horrible thing in the world. But if you took, I guess the closest we would consider is chopped herring.
Yeah.
But it's chopped herring that really is very runny. So Kirvei Dogim is the fish have really broken down into fish juice. But it's not fish juice.
No.
It's not brine. It's actually the juice of the fish itself. Like in the same way that liquid fat is the fat itself.
Things were tough in those days.
So Kirvei Dogim shenimuchu. Kirvei Dogim is the innards of the fish that became liquefied. Once again, think of chopped herring that is liquefied. Adam notin latochu shemen. So these items, it looks like you've got these two items. You want to use them for for oil. So what do you do? Adam notin latochum shemen kolshu madlik. You put in a little bit of good oil, olive oil. It looks like it gives it some consistency, and you can light it. So the Gemara says, so what's the obvious question? We said if you got something bad and you're mixing something good, it's bad. So it looks like here what's going on. You're taking the oil, you mix it into this rotten fish and together, or into this runny oil, runny fat, and it makes it work. Because why else would you do it? So it looks like it does work. So the Gemara says, no, not really true. It says, really, you could use Kirvei Dogim and Chalav Mehutach, you could do it by itself. And you could mix it together. You don't need the oil. You're just putting the oil to make it work a little better. But really, without the oil itself, it would work. So the Gemara let's see how the Gemara explains it. Hani memshi beinayu. Really, chalev mehutach and kirvei dogim will work by itself. V'hani lo memshi beinayu, and the others don't really work by themselves. V'gazu rabbana chalev mehutach mishum chalev she'en mehutach. So really, runny fat can work as an oil, can work as a fuel.
Right.
Solid fat. We learned before in the Mishnah, cannot.
Right.
So therefore, really, you got to stay with this for a minute. A little bit complicated. So runny fat does work by itself.
Right.
You put shemen in only because you want to put shemen in.
Right.
But runny fat really will work by itself. But you normally can't use
solid fat.
You can't use solid fat. So normally we don't allow you to use runny fat because we're afraid if you use runny fat, you use solid fat.
Right.
Right. That's what Smart says. However, if you add oil into it, that's already a different kind of thing. It really itself, it could work. We're only not allowing it because the gzeira looks too similar to the regular fat. But if you kind of put shemen into it, we're going to make it work. Otherwise, we'll say it's gzeira l'gzeira. I'll read again. I'll read it. Where do I want to read it from? Hani, the first long line. Hani mimshi beinayu, the runny fat and the kirvei dogim that are runny work by itself. Hani lo mimshku beinayu, and the regular fat you can work by itself. The Chacham said you can't use runny fat because of fats, the solid fat. The kirvei dogim shenimucho mishum kirvei dogim shlomimucha, and they said you can't use fish innards that became runny which does work, but you can't use it because it looks too similar to fish innards that are solid. So the Gemara says, what if you put into it shemen? That's okay. So the Gemara says, "V'ligzer nami chelev mehutach b'kirvei dogim shenimucho shnosan l'tocho shemen mishum chelev mehutach b'kirvei dogim shenimucho shlonosan l'tocho shemen." So why don't we say that while you can put in oil, if you can't use them separately, why putting in oil will make it work? So the Gemara says that's okay. Why? Higuf gzeira v'nachnu nekem v'nigzer gzeira. That's already far-fetched. In other words, if you're going to use just regular runny kirvei dogim, then you'll get confused using solid kirvei dogim. If you use regular runny chalev, that looks more like solid chalev. But the moment you put in shemen, which gives it some kind of different consistency, that is already too far removed from the original problem, which is going to be solid chalev and solid kirvei dogim, that we will allow you to do so.
Nobody assumes, in other words, that you're going to put olive oil on a piece of solid
Correct.
fat. That's the concept, sort of.
No one assumes that if you're going to
you're going to take olive oil and put it on solid fat. You wouldn't do that.
Right. You wouldn't do that because it's solid.
Right.
So the fact that you can mix shemen together with the runny is different enough than the solid fat. So therefore, that's the case. But really, it's not that you're mixing good with bad. You're mixing good with good.
Good, exactly.
Okay, so that brings us up to 2 dots. And with your permission, I think this is a good place for us to stop. And this will take us up to next week. Okay, which we're going to talk a little bit about the Big Day Kohanim, and then we're going to talk about, right at the bottom of the page, we're going to start talking about Shabbos and Chanukah itself. Okay, thanks for staying with the Sisa Gemara. It was a bit rough, I know. Okay, good.